Yeah.
Because this has got, even though they didn't have the staff. Yes, yeah, yeah. There's
Right, we're now live.
okay, it's gone live
Despite the fact that I'm back.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of Shirehall for the South Planning Committee. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event that the alarm sounds, please leave the building and gather on the front outside. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I ask you to please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off in order that those watching the live stream know who is speaking? Could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking, please? To ensure that members of the committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, and if such behaviour persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I shall now ask each member to introduce yourself, please, starting with Nigel, please.
That's Nigel Lumby, councillor for Albrighton Ward.
Councillor Hilary Love for Church Stratton and Craven Arms Ward.
And Councillor Tony Parsons for Basin Hill, Column and Sutton Ward.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall representing Broseley.
Councillor Robert Tyndall, I represent Browntree Division. Andy Boddington, Ludlow North.
Councillor Christian Lee representing Bridge North East and Astley Upwards.
Councillor Ed Potter for Leighton.
Councillor Nick Hignett representing Ray Valley Ward.
Emma Green, Principal Enforcement Officer.
Charlotte.
Charlotte Morrison, Development Manager.
Graham French, Principal Planner.
David Evans, Chair of this committee and Councillor for Church Stratton and Craven Arms.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
Okay. Tim Ward in the end, you don't know. Apologies for absence, please.
We've had no apologies.
No apologies. Minutes of the meeting held on December the 13th. You have a proposal for the minutes, please.
I'll propose the
Thank
minutes.
you, Councillor Parsons. Thank you, Mr. Lee. All in favour, please. Thank you. Public questions.
No public questions, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure for community interest, please. Anybody got any interest, please? Come take this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6, the Waterfall Mayhurst. I am the ward member for that area. I'll be speaking on that item and then I will leave the room and take no part in the debate. And item 8, 20 Willow Park Minsterley. I am the ward member for that application as well, but I won't be speaking, but I will take no part in the debate or vote.
Thank you, Councillor Hignett. Anyone else, please? No, thank you. We now go on to item number 5, which is Pens Falls, Lower Barnsford, Ludford, Ludlow. Graham, please.
Thank you, Chair. We'll have the next slide, please. Thank you, and forward on again. So this application seeks permission for erection of one dwelling following demolition of the existing buildings and a detached quadruple garage incorporating garden and bin store. The application also seeks permission for modifications to existing vehicular access and removal of trees. It's located just south of Ludlow to the north side of Lower Barnes Road. Next slide, please. So it's an amended resubmission of an application from 2022, which was refused due to being materially larger than the existing dwelling it replaces, being overbearing and unsympathetic to the local context and encroaching into the countryside. Current application has been amended as follows. extension of residential curtilage into the paddock has been omitted. Can we have the next slide? And the next again. And we'll move on to the proposed elevations. Next one. And the next again. We'll get there. Next, I think we just want to see the, that's the one. The amendments are, there's been an extension of the residential curtilage into the paddock, which is now omitted. The scale has been reduced by removing an integral garage and associated proposed guest accommodation above. An integral garage has been replaced by a separate quadruple garage building incorporating garden and bin store, which has been aligned along the western boundary of the site. You can see on the left-hand side of the top elevation there. And a previously proposed pool house, sort of small building within the grounds, has been omitted. Some mature cedar and cypress trees would be lost. We can perhaps move forward. We'll see some pictures of the site, and you'll see that it's quite a wooded context, and some of those trees will be lost. We could just slowly flick through the photos and then reverse it, come back in the opposite direction. So the additional hedge planting is being proposed along the western boundary along the Overton Road. So the parish council and local councillors support the application contrary to the officer's recommendation, therefore triggering the committee referral. So Ludford Parish support the application, noting that the new building uses the same footprint and that the garage is now separate to the house and on the opposite side by the road. They consider that extending the accommodation area upward is a better choice, and the new house will be the same distance from the neighbouring property. No developments now planned for the paddock. Councillor Parry supports the proposal on the basis that the plan addresses the previous comments. The annex garage is in a better position separate from the neighbouring property. Entrance visibility has been improved and the house is now the right size for the site. SC Conservation are satisfied there will be no harm to the conservation area. Trees team have withdrawn a holding objection following submission of an updated trees statement, noting that there hasn't been local community objection to the loss of the trees that are proposed for removal. No objections from other planning consultees. 2 public letters received in support on the basis of appropriate design and traffic safety benefits. In policy terms, SAMDEV policy MD7A requires the replacement dwelling should not be materially larger than the dwelling it replaces. Additionally, an objective of regulating the size of replacement properties to limit the tendency towards provision of larger dwellings in the countryside and to maintain a balanced mix of dwelling types. Council's supplementary planning document on housing also requires replacement dwellings to respect the local character of the area. Replacement dwellings should be sited in the same position and should be of a similar size and appearance to the original. Policy CS6 just highlights the sustainability elements, including safeguarding residential and local amenity. So if we can go back, we're seeing the existing property there. If we can go back to the proposed elevation, the main elevation that we saw, thank you. The existing dwelling is a single story, having a floor area of around 217.9 square metres, pitched roof, ridge height 6.37 metres. By contrast, proposed dwelling, which you see before you, comprises 3 stories, or 2.5 if you're arguing, with a total floor area of around 447 square metres. Additionally, small single bay detached garage to the rear will be replaced by a much larger 4-bay garage seen to the right of the slide there, with a garden and bin store, which is nearly 10 metres in height to the ridge. So replacement dwelling and garage are clearly materially larger than the original, and this represents a conflict with policy MD7A. Given the prominent location, officers consider that proposals will be experienced as an overbearing and dominant introduction to streets scene when viewed from the public highway, with impacts being exacerbated by removal of trees on the site. Whilst replacement planting is proposed, this will take some time to establish. Local properties in the vicinity are predominantly 1.5 story, where roof space has been converted to form a 2nd story. proposed 2.5-storey dwelling conflicts with this character. In terms of residential amenity, it's not considered that proposals would, however, result in any demonstrable harm. So to conclude, whilst the principle of providing replacement dwelling in a countryside location is acceptable, current proposals conflict with policy MD7A in terms of scale and design, resulting in significant harm in the opinion of officers who are therefore recommending refusal. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. We have a couple of speakers on this. Vivian Parry, local ward member, please. Okay. You have 5 minutes to address the committee, please. Councillor Parry.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me speak. I know this property really well because I've been the councillor there for 22 years. I knew the people that lived there before. They always said that they thought it was a very shallow building, which made it quite damp. And I used to go in and have tea and coffee, and you could see the damp coming up through the walls and everything. So that was my opinion of it as well. Now, I have been round and checked with everybody in that area. There's about 17 houses, and none of them are against this property and for the height of the new property going up. The people that live next door were against the what we call a garage, which is a tall garage. Yes, it is. But we have a gentleman here, Mr. Fisher, who collects things. I'll get back to that in a minute. But the people that live next door now are full for the garage going on the other side. It used to be that wall that is on the main A49. That used to have a building which was a tall house, which unfortunately the council had to knock down years ago. We have one part of this had that wall fall down. It took the council 2 years to rebuild it. And you can imagine what the traffic was like going in and out of there. So the trees that are along that wall compound the earth and cause that wall to move every now and again. It's a worry for the parish council. It's the roots underneath that make the wall shift and then fall into the road. So this would help actually to take some of these trees out. It would stop the compounding of the roots. What they suggest is if this building goes up, then it will stop the sound because we know that trees stop sound coming in from the main road, and that's a very busy road. It will stop the sound, and also they are going to put more trees in. Also, they are going to put a new driveway in, which will make the site not as dark as what it is. Until you're on the site, the pictures that you've had taken are quite good because you've got it on a really bright day, but it can be very dark round there. As you go into Barnes Road, the person who owns the fields, who is a farmer, has had a tranche of trees put all the way around his land, which must be 8 deep. So now the whole of that road is very, very dark. And to have a better way onto the site will lighten it up considerably. And when they put the new trees in, it will also go towards the sound as well. Now, it also is very hard to get out of Barnes Road. We've had trouble, even though we've got mirrors and everything, we've got trouble trying to get out. And I have a terrible job. I have nearly been hit quite a few times coming out of there. As I said, the neighbours are not against this happening. What we're looking at is that this gentleman has gone out of his way, Mr. Fisher, to do everything that has been asked of him. We have had 3 planning officers look at this. I've gone backwards and forwards. I've talked to the officers and I've talked to them about how this would improve the area considerably. It will also, I know it's 2.5 stories actually. I know that sounds an awful lot, but the house needs to have something. It needs to be to sit there better, and it will do if it's 2.5 stories. As I said, Mr. Fisher collects things, so he's got quite a lot of old cars that are going in this in what I call a large garage. He also wants to put his tractor in that he's going to be cutting all the land that he's got at the back down. I do know while men collect things, as I had a husband that used to have my house full of railway memorabilia, so I do know that they collect things at times. So my idea really is you are going to make this a far better property for everybody that lives there. It'll open the view up. We can't do anything about the trees now that were put in by the farmer. He's determined he's going to keep them all there. But if we open it up slightly and make a more better roadway in, it's going to clear it for the rest of the people that live further down, who complain to me all the time about the trees across, because it takes all the sun out of their houses. They sit permanently in dark places. So, and that's all I've got to really say about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor, very much. Any questions, please? Councillor Tindall.
Yes, I'm not quite sure where we are in London. I don't believe there's been a site visit this time.
It's go over Ludford Bridge out towards,
Overton Grange.
yeah.
Overton
Yeah.
Grange.
Walk past Ludford House,
Yes.
and the tall trees and everything belong to Ludford House. And then you come onto this property, which is as
On
you
the
turn
left.
into Barnes Road.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay, thank you, Councillor
thank you
Pryor.
very much.
Oh, sorry.
So Councillor Colin Gary Thomas, please, the agent, please. You have 3 minutes, please, to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm speaking on behalf of my client, Richard and Kathleen, to express their request for favourable consideration of our application for a high-quality replacement dwelling at Penderford. My client has a long connection to the local area, having started school at Friars Walk in 1964 and having attended Ludlow Grammar School in the 1970s. They are lifelong classic car enthusiasts, and the garage building will provide a safe and secure environment for their small but high quality collection of classic vehicles, 4 to be exact. The replacement dwelling will serve as their retirement home, and they have no interest in converting the garage for any other purpose. And after their days, the planning authority, should it desire, have all the control needed to prevent overdevelopment in the future. And whilst I hear it has been said that it's 2.5 stories, it isn't really. It's a single story building. We've added a story on top, which is partly concealed by a roof. So it will appear as a 1.5 story building. And the half story that's been added in by the planning officer there is actually a mezzanine over the master bedroom. So it's not really a 3-story building, which has been alluded to. Richard and Kathleen welcome the statement made by the Conservation Officer at paragraph 414 of the report, which I quote says, "On balance, it is not considered that the proposal including the removal of the trees will result in undue harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area." It has been a long and challenging journey to bring this project to committee with an extensive pre-application submission, followed by a planning application that was refused. Despite setbacks, my client has continued to take on board comments, working through every obstacle that has arisen. And I'm proud to say my client still has the energy and spirit to continue with this high quality, energy efficient home to enable their move back to Ludlow. Richard and Kathleen are committed to preserving the open countryside feel, and I'm pleased to report the Parish Council and neighbours support their proposal. The land area is approximately 80,000 square feet. Our proposal includes a total building area of about 3,500 square feet, representing less than 4.5% of the total land area. It is also worth noting mature trees are retained, and the footprint of the new dwelling is the same as the existing structure. And the cypress trees, which were stated as being removed, are actually Leylandia, and nobody really likes them because they're pushing the walls over along Lower Barnes Road and the main road. The footprint of the new dwelling is the same as the existing structure, and the garage will provide residents along Lower Barnes Road with a sound reduction buffer, helping to reduce the considerable noise that comes from the B Road there adjacent. In conclusion, our proposal will have a positive impact on the local area, and on behalf of Richard and Kathleen, I respectfully request your favourable consideration. With support of the Parish Council, neighbours, and a commitment to preserving the open countryside feel, we are confident that this project will bring benefits to the local community.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone got any questions, please? No? Thank you very much. Right, now open up to committee, please. Right, I've looked at the plan application. I've looked at the major ground that this new build stands in. And it fits in there quite well, actually. There's not, it's not taking up the bulk of the site. And with all the trees that still remaining behind it and the age of the tree and everything else, I think this dwelling will be a vast improvement on the area. The bungalow looks old and tired. It doesn't look in the best of condition. Therefore, I would support this application. Councillor Parsons.
Yes, I mean, looking at this application, it's difficult really not to support it, in that I accept that this is a much larger size than the property that currently stands there. But the parish and the local councillor are both supporting this particular proposal. And of the consultees, the tree team have changed their view going through the process. I think they've seen 2 amendments to the property. They didn't like the first one, but after the second one, I believe that they've removed their objections. We hear that there are no issues with the neighbours, and there have been no public objections to this development, and so I'm going to support it.
Councillor Tindley, Councillor Lumley, please.
First.
Councillor Newton, please.
Yeah, we swap against. Is that true? Thank you, Chair. This I don't regard as being the open countryside, despite the officer's reports. If you know Ludford, it's actually, you've got the village, we'll just sketch it, and then you've got Ludford House, which is huge gardens, and then you've got this area of Ludford on, which leads on the unnamed road leading to Barnes Road, and you've got this area, which has 14 houses. Everybody's always considered it to actually be part of the village, not a remote detached settlement. And I think that this is part of Ludford, so not in the open countryside, which removes that objection. But I'm a little reticent about the height of the main property. We've heard a reason for the size of the garage, and I can accept that. What I'm uncomfortable with is the location of the garage, which is very close to the boundary wall. There's only 2.4 metres between the garage and the boundary wall. Well, you can't get screening in 2.4 metres. It's just too narrow. It will die, and all you can get in there is shrubs. And you really can't get any decent cover. Well, leylandii might grow, but we don't support those. So that's my major concern. And, shifting it to the east by a couple of metres would work fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley, please.
Yes, when I first read this, I just immediately thought it was too big, and I've heard what various councillors said and everybody, and I haven't really moved from that. I can see why it'd be described as 1.5 because of the way the roof is, but you could easily say it's 2.5 because the mezzanine is actually on a 3rd floor. I think the garage is far too big, just because somebody's got 4 nice cars and they need to put them somewhere. That doesn't mean we should, in open countryside, allow them a huge garage. And certainly the tractor, if he owns the field at the back, could probably get that under agricultural to put his tractor in. So I've not heard anything where I'd be supporting today. I would be staying with what the officer has recommended.
It's just a question, really. Can we have a slide showing the location, the proposed location of the garage compared with the main house? I'm a bit lost.
You should be able to rob.
So it's not shown correctly on our plan. It's shown as being up this top corner. Sorry to be bewildered, but. Page 5.
That's the original layout you're looking at, Councillor Tindall, not the new one.
So can we have a site plan of the new proposal? Oh, I see. It's southwest corner.
Yes,
Yeah, you got it.
that's the house, that is the house.
Yeah, and then that's the garage. It's got a little bit of a step. Is it? It's like a truncated L. No, don't worry, Anne. Oh, no.
I'm being told that's the old plan.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I can see now. It's not coloured in, not blacked. So it wants to be moved and to the east a little bit. Oh, well,
Yeah, I'm being told that's happened.
sorry, the site plan has changed, has it? Yes.
They've moved it further over.
I just get rain for me.
Yes, it would appear that the plan that has been put in is not the latest version of the site plan. Apologies for that. I think there is a slight additional gap, but I can't remember offhand how much additional space there is between Overton Road and the west elevation of the garage. I think it's another couple of metres, is it?
2 metres.
2 metres, yeah.
Yeah, it's been moved over.
So there is then of the order of 3 metres of space between the edge of Overton Road and the site, which you may say is just enough to get some shrub vegetation in the intervening area as part of the landscape package which is being proposed, and that could be conditioned potentially.
Thank you.
Could I just ask what is the nature of the western boundary? Is it brick or is it a wall or is it a hedge or?
It's a stone wall, isn't it?
It's a stone wall.
Yeah.
Well, can I try and finish?
Yeah,
I'm happy to support this application. Councillor Boddington suggested it be moved. I don't know whether you're now satisfied with its new position, which is different from that one. Well, I haven't seen the new. Sorry, I haven't seen the new plans, and without that, I mean, if it's moved 2 metres, then it's actually 4.4 metres away from the boundary wall of Overton Road. I would suggest if we approve it, we make a condition that it's 5 metres away, which means you can get some decent trees in there and they have a chance of surviving. So are we saying we haven't got an up-to-date site plan for this committee to look at? I'm back, by the way.
The plans that were put in were taken from the online planning register by the business support team when the application was when the PowerPoint was being collated. One would expect that the business support team would have taken the most up-to-date plans from the register. I think that all I can say is that if Councillor Parry is indicating that that isn't the case, then it is within the remit of this committee to require that a minimum distance is maintained between the property boundary and the western facade of the garage in order to facilitate planting. I think that to me that does not represent any fundamental change to the sort of characteristics of the design of the site, that would result in an improvement because the garage would be less overbearing and the planting would be possible with it. I don't see any indications in the site layout plan that the intervening area between the proposed property and the garage is mission critical in terms of layout and could not accommodate a further, say, a minimum standoff of 4 metres, say, from the boundary of the road to facilitate planting under a landscaping scheme. So I think, to me, the workaround for the committee is that they could impose a condition requiring that minimum 4 metre standoff, which I think is a sort of compromise distance, which would facilitate safe planting. That is, unless the applicant has any further observations to make on how critical the intervening area between the house and the garage is.
Can I go into
That's acceptable, he just said.
We'll go look at your.
Thank you, Chairman. For clarity, yes, it has been moved, and we have taken on board via Councillor Parry the comment that came from in consultation of wanting a green buffer there. If the committee is happy, we can look at a suitable condition where we could consider that with planning officers as to what sort of green buffer is, whether it's trees or shrubs, depending on the space available. Also, there is a need to retain that wall. It's an important wall within the conservation area, so we need to ensure that the structure is adequate as well. So there is a sort of design engineering structure issue as well as planting.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We come back into Bonington.
Thank you. I mean, I think we should aim for 5 metres, but delegate that condition and the final approval to planning officers. Should this committee actually wish to approve, of course.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Well, I don't know whether that's a proposal, is it?
No, you propose it.
All right. I propose that we approve this application subject to the condition that the garage block is moved eastwards more than is shown on this particular site plan. And we leave it to the planning officers to agree what sort of gap that buffer zone should be.
Yes.
Sorry, not very elegantly put, but I'm slightly rusty. Thank you, Chair. If members are minded to go against the officer recommendation, then seek delegated authority to provide the conditions rather than the need to go back to committee. These would be standard conditions in terms of surface materials, access, landscaping, drainage, but also with the bespoke condition in relation to the minimum standards of Everton Road.
Yeah.
But I think it would help to have an indicative level from this committee to constrain and define the dialogue with the agent in terms of distance. Okay. So could we say that we're going for 4 metres as a minimum level?
Yes. I'll take the proposal, Councillor Tyndall, and I'd like to go for 5 metres away from the existing wall and to allow landscaping. Delegate that to the officers, work with the applicant, make sure that's carried out. Yeah. Okay.
Was that 5 metres?
5 metres.
Sorry, I thought I said 4 metres.
Yeah, you said 4, but I'd rather, you said 4 metres, but I'd rather leave it at 5 and then there's plenty of space there, like.
We just need the reasons. Yes, fine.
Okay.
We just need the reasons as well.
The reason why for the recommendation is because I think this is a more up-to-date dwelling. I think the old dwelling is ancient, is damp, and it will need a lot of money spending on it. And this new development suits the area. It suits the setting that it stands in, and therefore I would second Councillor Tyndall's recommendation to allow the application to go forward. With conditions to the opposite. Okay. Right with that, Graham?
Yes, thank you.
Good. You right with that, Kay? Right, we'll take the vote now. Would people make sure they got the microphone switched on so we can hear on live stream which way we're voting?
Okay, if you could please indicate which way you're going to vote for the proposal to accept the approve the application contrary to the recommendation for the reasons set out by Councillor Tyndall and Councillor Evans. Caroline Bagnall. For. Andy Waddington.
For.
Richard Heffer. Oh, he's not here, sorry. Nick Hignett.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Hilary Wheeler. For. Nigel Lumby.
Against.
Tony Parsons.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Robert Tyndall.
For.
And David Evans.
For.
That's 9 for and 1 against.
9 for, 1 against. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We now move on to item number 6, which is Waterfall Minsterley. Dan, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for full planning permission for the erection of a 2-storey dwelling which would replace an existing static caravan on the site. So we know that this location, Malehurst, is outside the settlement boundary of Minsterley and is accessible by a single track carriageway from the A418. Amended plans, the dwelling has an external floor area of 150 square metres with dimensions around 10 by 13 metres. Amended plans submitted producing simpler elevations incorporating render and dark tiles with landscape details. Could we go to the elevation plan, please? Thank you. So a relatively sort of simple 1.5 height property. So it's public highway, the site currently accommodates a static caravan and various other structures. Perimeters are defined by close boarded fencing. We can move perhaps to the photos at the end. Committee clerk, we can do, thank you. 2 other touring caravans present on an adjacent site are understood to be used for separate residential purposes. Planning application retained these was refused in September last year on sustainability and access visibility grounds, but this is a separate site. So outline planning consent was granted for a replacement dwelling on the site in June 2017. At the time there was a prefabricated dwelling present on the site which has since been demolished. However, none of the reserved matters which were supposed to be submitted for the outline approval were submitted, and the permission has now lapsed. Subsequently, permission for a single mobile home for residential use was approved in 2020 on the basis that the principle of a lawful residential use on the site was accepted, notwithstanding the countryside location. Parish Council and Local Council support the planning application contrary to the officer's recommendation. Accordingly, the application is referred to committee. The parish considers the benefits of the application outweigh the fact that it's outside the development boundary. Site has long established residential use and the house replacing the caravan will be a visual improvement. Parish proposed the existing western access, if we can move back up to the layout plan second from, thank you. So the area hatched orange is stopped up and new access is adopted in the east. Proposed dwelling will meet specific housing needs of the family and especially a disabled child. Landscape plan will better reflect the countryside location and soften the existing fence boundary. Councillor Hignett has supported the proposals. Regulatory services haven't objected and note that mine gas risk assessments not identified any issues. Highways haven't objected and recognised proposed eastern access provides a betterment relative to the current situation. They recommend the western access is closed as per the parish council's recommendation. No objections from other consultees and no public representations have been received. So when we look at the policies, CS5 core strategy doesn't support the provision of new open market residential developments in countryside provision, but this of course is being built as a sort of on an existing site where the residential principle has been established. So it's slightly different. So policy MD7A of the Sandown plan states that replacement dwellings will only be permitted where the dwelling to be replaced is a permanent structure within the established continuing residential use. The site has an established residential use, but the current mobile home is not classed as a permanent structure for the purposes of this policy. The former prefab dwelling would have been classified as permanent, but has been removed. The proposal to replace the caravan with permanent dwelling in the countryside conflicts with the general policies of restraint which apply in the countryside. Planning permission was granted the siting of a single mobile home for residential use. The proposal comprises a building as opposed to a mobile home and is significantly larger than a caravan as defined by Caravan Sites Act 1968. Greater scale of the proposed dwelling is considered to have a detrimental impact on rural amenities of this countryside area relative to the existing smaller static caravan it would replace. Whilst landscaping could deliver some environmental betterment, officers don't consider that this is on its own outweighs the more fundamental policy objection to countryside development. Understood, proposed dwellings designed to meet a specific need for the applicant's family. However, planning permission runs with the land, so any permission granted could also be developed by others without such a need. If the officer's recommendation is not supported, then closure of the western access has been recommended by Parish Council. The Highway Authority could, and this could in principle be covered by condition. But in conclusion, whilst the site has a lawful residential use for siting of a caravan, it's not considered that its replacement with a permanent open market dwelling is acceptable in planning policy terms in this countryside location. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Right, there's 3 speakers. Mr. Alan Hodges, please. Representing the Parish Council. And there are 3 minutes to speak, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Ponsonby Parish Council is very aware of the beauty of its rural landscape and is, of course, very mindful of local plan policy. And therefore, the council has very rarely supported development outside the development boundary. It makes a rare exception in this case because there is a long list we consider of positive material considerations which, on balance, outweigh its open countryside location. That's the nub of our case. 1, appearance. The appropriate design of the house replacing a caravan will be a very considerable improvement on the appearance of the site, which for many years has been a public eyesore. No dispute about that. We're talking about something with no fault of the applicant, has been a public eyesore and a pain in the backside for the local council. Secondly, landscape and biodiversity. The proposed landscaping, trees, green areas and extensive hedging will increase biodiversity as acknowledged in the ecology report and will also improve the landscape appearance. Thirdly, visual amenity. In view of the house design replacing an ugly caravan and the landscaping, this will improve public visual amenity on a popular route for walkers, cyclists, etc. Fourthly, highway safety. The new access, as has been pointed out, will improve highway safety as the existing one is not only on a sharper bend, but also on a very narrow road. And again, the highway officer would accept our remarks. Fifthly, the site, there is no dispute that the plot has long established residential use. Long before the caravan that's been referred to was there, it had a permanent home. So existing residential use, there is no dispute as to the fact that the site has been used for that in the past. Sixthly, sustainability. We would argue it is a sustainable development, being close to a regular bus route and established walking routes to the services of Ponsonby Village, or indeed Minsterley. And its situation, note, is neither sporadic nor isolated, which is part of the countryside policy designed to prevent that, but in fact is part of a cluster of 6 houses. Seventhly, pre-app advice. The pre-app advice was broadly favourable. I quote, "We could well support a suitably sized and designed dwelling." You've seen the design of it. It's very definitely 1.5 stories, countryside, etc. Fits in with neighbouring properties. And finally, the 8th point, personal circumstances. whilst we acknowledge that personal circumstances are not usually a material planning concern, we feel that what you will hear shortly surrounding particularly the disabled youngster, this is a classic case of where you should make an exception and take into account the personal circumstances of the family. So in conclusion, the application will provide considerable improvements to the appearance, biodiversity of the site and to visual amenity. It will enhance the beauty of the parish. And as I said at the beginning, the whole thrust of our case is that the combined weight of favourable material considerations, should we suggest, outweigh its open countryside location. And this has been the case in two relatively recent applications in our parish where they were in open countryside, but for reasons similar to the ones I've given, the officer accepted that they would approve it. There is one difficulty with all this, and that is, if you read the officer's report, the whole thrust of his argument is based on, thank you, it being a replacement dwelling. The application, your agenda, does not state replacement dwelling, it states dwelling. And that provides considerable confusion for us all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Nick on down for us, please.
Nick first.
It's me next.
Go for it, Nick, you
It's me first.
All right.
Nick, you go.
I'll take the seat.
You have 5 minutes, Nick, all right?
Okay. Well, it's my birthday tomorrow. And I know you're asking yourself what that's got to do with this application, but it has, because I am living proof that there's been a residential dwelling in some shape or form on the application site for over 50 years. I've been driving past it for over 50 years, and the only gap in seeing a building is very, very recently. Neighbourhood Watch is very active in my ward, and I remember the previous house being demolished. I asked at the time, and I was told that a replacement house would be built. I pass the site at least twice a week, and I've been waiting for work to start, but of course we all know the circumstances. Now, undoubtedly mistakes have been made. One, following the outline consent granted 5th of June 2017, the then owners proceeded to demolish the building and clear the site. Two, Mr. MacDonald's family purchased the site as a building plot without first seeking professional advice. But then we all make mistakes. But what was not a mistake was the global pandemic and the ensuing lockdown, which disrupted and virtually halted normal life in many ways. If you add a medical family situation to this, then you've got what I believe are extenuating circumstances. In the officer's report 6.1.3, it states that planning permission was granted in 2017 for a replacement dwelling on the site in lieu of a prefabricated dwelling formerly present. But this planning permission lapsed in 2020. In 2020, following the demolition of this prefabricated building, planning permission under reference 20/01729/full was granted for a mobile home conforming to the definition of a caravan. The site thus benefits from an established continuing residential use, which meets one of the requirements of policy MD7A and the SPD. 6.1.4 of the officer's report quotes MD7A again, this time stating that the replacement dwelling should only be permitted where the dwelling to be replaced is a permanent structure. The officer agrees that the prefabricated dwelling previously present would likely have amounted to a building which would have been regarded as a permanent structure under MD7A and the SPD. Now, this apparent contradiction in terms arises because of the relatively short period of time when the site was cleared, ready for the replacement dwelling to be built. Thus, the static caravan had been placed at the edge of the application site so as not to impose on the works when the dwelling was being built. There is no doubt that the static caravan is totally unsuitable for the current and future needs of this family. I have a similar caravan myself at the Welsh coast, and I know firsthand the difficult aspects of living for any length of time in one. They are difficult to keep cool on hot days, they're difficult to keep warm on cold days, they're difficult to keep tidy due to lack of storage space, and they're difficult to move around in, particularly for wheelchair users or those with limited mobility. Finally, they are difficult to justify for full-time occupation in a climate emergency, when we've declared that we must all make efforts to reduce our carbon footprint. The design of the proposed dwelling, however, can accommodate adaptations to help with mobility issues in the future. I note letters of support have been received by the local GP, as well as the children's occupational therapist and community physiotherapist. I acknowledge that these matters are personal circumstances, which would change over time, whereas the dwelling is likely to be permanent. However, conditions can be included to cover the future use of this property. I think the proposed size and design of the dwelling is appropriate when compared to other two-storey properties nearby, limiting any impact on neighbours. And I've not seen any public comments received in connection with this application. I do not believe that granting permission for this dwelling would set a precedent for future applications, as the circumstances in this case are exceptional and specific. Shropshire Council has a statutory duty to provide sufficient sites to accommodate custom-built dwellings, which is what this would be. In conclusion, planning policy gives guidance to decision makers as to how they approach decision making. I quote, "Local planning authorities should approach decisions on proposed development in a positive and creative way. They should use the full range of planning tools available, including brownfield registers and permission in principle, and work proactively with applicants to secure developments that will improve the economic, social and environmental conditions of the area. Decision makers at every level should seek to approve applications for sustainable development where possible." Unquote. So in my opinion, this site has permission in principle, will improve the economic, social and environmental conditions of the area, and is much more sustainable than the static caravan currently in use. Furthermore, final sentence.
Okay.
There is sufficient manoeuvrability within the wording of the policies to support a dwelling on this site as proposed. And that is what I'm asking members to do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ignat. Right, we'll call on Diane Humphries, please. And you're the agent for the applicant, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. There are a number of key factors that have impacted significantly on the planning status of this site, and they are interlinked. Firstly, the original house was demolished by the previous landowner, presumably to add value to the site prior to marketing as a building plot. It was not appreciated at the time how precarious the demolition of the original house would leave the outline consent. Secondly, the pandemic and resulting lockdown that came at a critical point in this plot's planning history. My client purchased the plot in November 2019 and the outline consent had just 6 months left to run. He bought the plot in good faith with the intention of building a forever home for his family. In early 2020, he set about getting plans prepared for the build, and I was instructed late February. Shortly thereafter, the whole country was in lockdown, and all the supporting reports that had been commissioned had to be postponed. As an interim measure, we secured approval for a caravan. The application was made for a temporary caravan. However, the council gave a permanent consent due to the established residential status of the site. It was June before the lockdown restrictions eased, and by that time the outline consent had lapsed. However, given the council's stated position that the site had an established residential use, we were not overly concerned. During this time, it became apparent that a larger house would be required to meet the family's needs due to significant changes in their situation, and it was on this basis we approached the council to seek pre-application advice. In response, the officers took the view they have taken in this report. The outline has lapsed, the house is gone, you have lost the consent. The implications of the house being demolished were not fully appreciated until the pre-application advice was received. All the published officers' reports refer to the site as having an established residential land use. An urgent review was requested. At that review, all the facts, including the planning history, the impact of the pandemic, and my client's personal circumstances, were laid before the officers. The conclusion of that review was that an application could well be supported. It is acknowledged that personal circumstances are rarely sufficient on their own to enable a departure from policy. However, my client's case extends well beyond personal circumstances and includes the fact that the site has an established residential use and also the fact that my client was seriously disadvantaged by the lockdown in March 2020, which prevented him from securing a reserved matters approval and keeping the outline consent alive. The current situation at site is a family comprising 2 adults and 4 children, one of whom is severely disabled, now living in a caravan. It is hoped the planning committee will give these significant factors weight when weighing the planning balance. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, please? Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Bond, please.
I know the site quite well. It's on one of the roads I used to access my division when I travelled to Westbury. And I concur with the local member about the fact that there has been a dwelling of some sort on that site for as long as I can remember. I understand around planning policy, but sometimes we are able to divert from policy under certain circumstances, and I'm content that the evidence provided by both the representative from the parish council and the agent that this is an application that we should support as a committee. It will be a vast improvement to the site. It's providing a sensible dwelling in a rural location. You're not talking about something that's massive or overdevelopment. I agree wholeheartedly about removing the access to the east. That will make a massive difference to the access of the site, and I am minded to wholeheartedly support this application.
Okay. Mr. Tindall, please.
Yes, I'm just trying to unknit this because I think that the mobile caravan, or the caravan that was given permission in 2020, is a little bit of a side issue. I think the main principle here is that there was a planning application approved, a planning permission approved for a dwelling in 2017, albeit that's now expired. So I think we've got the basis on which to grant approval. Thank you.
Councillor to speak. Councillor Bagnall, please.
Thank you. I agree that we should be keeping our countryside as green as possible. However, I think in this situation, the length of time that a residency has been established on that site should be taken into account. The fact that planning permission has previously been granted and lapsed through no great fault of the applicant, and also the fact that a house there is going to look considerably better than some sort of temporary structure as a mobile home or a caravan. So I think those things should be taken into account. I think also, not as a councillor, not as a member of a planning committee, but as a human being, I think we should also consider the impact on that family of living in a caravan with a severely disabled child. I think we should also note the high degree of support that has been demonstrated by the local community. So I would certainly be minded to support this.
Okay, any other councillors to speak? I would say, mobile home is very severe overcrowding here. I wouldn't think it's healthy. We've got about 6 people living in a caravan. And like we say, biodiversity, keeping caravans, like Nick said, cool in the summer and warm in the winter. I think it goes a long way. And if we've got a child there with health issues, I think these issues need to be addressed. And if we're going to be looking at a dwelling that's suitably adapted, that family will continue on living in the area and to look after a child with a disability and its quality of life for the rest of the family, basically. I think being pushed in a small caravan with 6 of you isn't the right way of living. So I think all the things stacked up to really approve the plan application, because, as you say, there was a prefabricated building here before, was taken down, but I can't see why we couldn't let the application go here, basically for the support of the family, biodiversity. You can come back in a minute, Graham, and with a condition that we close the access off. So, I will propose the application.
I second that.
Yeah, Chair, if members are minded to go against the officer's recommendation, I would request that the committee give officers mandate to prepare the schedule of planning conditions for any approval under delegation. I would also request that any such conditions incorporated provision to close off permanently the western access.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah, so we'll delegate all conditions and all negotiations with the planning officer, and we propose the application as it goes forward. I'll propose that from the chair. Seconded by Councillor Potter.
I'll second that.
Okay, can we put that to the vote, please, Kim?
Okay, if you're going to get with your voting for or against the proposal,
Put your microphone on, please.
sorry,
All right.
for and against the proposal, just put forward by Councillor Evans, Caroline Battle,
For.
Andy Boddington, for Richard Huffer. Oh yeah, crossing out. Christian Lee,
For.
Henry Wheeler,
For.
Nigel Lumpy,
For.
Tony Parsons,
For.
Ed Potter,
For.
Robert Tyndall,
For.
and David Evans.
4.
So that's unanimous.
Thank you. Right, just a note to say, the next application at Glazeley, the next item withdrawn on the agenda and the report should be disregarded. Recent progress with associated affordable housing legal agreement means that the item is no longer meets the criteria for reporting back to the committee.
Should we get Nick back in?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, he's got to go out
Oh,
for
he's
the next
gonna go,
one.
right.
Yeah.
He didn't say
he was going.
He might want to speak.
No, he's not going to speak.
No, he wouldn't speak on the next one.
But he didn't say he was going to leave because he doesn't have to.
We'll now take a conference break.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, we're going to have a conference break now, Nick. Sorry for that.
I've just had one.
Seven. There's now three.
Just an recommendation.
And so it's
without that against Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Right, we move on to number 8 on the agenda. It's 20 Willow Court, Minsterley. Graham, please.
Thank you. We have a couple of slides forward, please. Okay, so this application seeks full planning for erection of a 2-storey side extension, properly known as 20 Willow Park, Minsterley. Those works include conversion of the existing garage storeroom into a larger kitchen dining room with a separate utility and WC on the ground floor, and a 4th bedroom with ensuite above. 1 parking space will be lost. To accommodate the extension, however, an additional existing parking space is located in the opposite side of the dwelling, which will not be affected by the proposals. So the application only comes to committee because the applicant's related to an employee of the council within the Place Directorates. So Minsterley Parish Council hasn't objected. The Highway Authority has no objections, provided a minimum of 2 parking spaces are retained. Environmental Protection don't object, recommend conditions to protect against landfill gas ingress, given the proximity of an historic landfill site to the development. There are no public representations. So alterations and developments of properties are acceptable in principle, providing they meet relevant criteria of Shropshire Core Strategy Policy CS6, which seeks to ensure that any extensions and alterations are sympathetic to size, mass, character and appearance of the original property in the surrounding area. The siting and the scale of the proposed 2-storey side extension are acceptable. If we could have the next couple of plans, please. So there we are. So we see this is the existing property. We have the next plan, just looking at the left-hand side. There we are. You see, you can just sort of change between the two to see the single-storey extension on the left-hand side. That's it. Thank you. Siting scale of the 2-storey side extension are considered to be acceptable. Scales not excessive. Proposals subservient to the original dwelling. Design complements the original property. Extension will have very limited impact on this in terms of falling in line with the existing dwelling. So due to the proposed extension being the side of the property, the proposals will be visible from the street scene. Other dwellings within the street have carried out similar extension, therefore it's not deemed to have an impact materially on the street scene. No concerns raised in relation to impact on neighbouring amenities. If we just turn to the layout plan, the first plan that you showed, please, again. Next, there we are. So that's the one, yes. You'll see that the extension is at the sort of southeastern end of that site. So, and you'll see that there is an elevation relatively close to the property boundary. The existing property is set back to the sort of south of that. The elevations facing that property are blank elevations on the upper story. So there isn't a kind of overlooking issue. So no concerns in relation to impact of surrounding amenities. As I said, dwelling shares a boundary with neighbouring property at the south elevation, but adequate distance between dwelling proposed 2-storey extension to avoid overlooking and shadowing issues. Case officer has been on site, has concluded 2 cars could be parked to the side of the property, and the applicants demonstrated this existing parking area can easily accommodate 2 vehicles. So in conclusion, the works are judged to be in scale and character with the original building. No significant harm is considered to arise from neighbouring residents' amenity. Application therefore accords with relevant development plan policies, including CS6 and ND2, and therefore approval is recommended. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is only before us because of the constitutional reason that the proposer is an officer of the council, and it would normally have been approved at a delegated authority. I would like to propose that we approve this application in line with the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Parsons, please.
Yes, I'll second that proposal.
Okay. Anything else wish to speak? Right, we have a proposal and a seconder for the application.
Okay, so if we can take a vote, if you can indicate whether you're for or against the proposal to accept the recommendation. Caroline Bagnall,
For.
Andy Waddington,
For.
Christian Lee,
4.
Kelly Wheeler. 4. Nigel Lumby.
4.
Tony Parsons.
4.
Ed Potter.
4.
Robert Tindall.
4.
And David Evans.
4.
Okay, so that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. We're now going to item 9, which is schedule of appeals. Just a noting there. Okay. Emma, will you go on schedule of appeals first?
Oh, no, sorry, I beg your pardon. We were doing the enforcement. I thought we were doing the enforcement one first.
Yeah.
Oh, I do beg your pardon, Emma. Sorry, I'm giving you a heart attack. So you'll note that there are, I'm not going to go into any particular detail on this. You'll note that there are quite a number of them. And this is because of the build-up from the deferral of the January committee. In general, it's the same picture. That level of appeals that we are defending remains consistently high. There are a couple where we have had appeal where the officer decision has been sort of not supported. They relate to relatively minor issues to do with conditions or small extensions. So I don't think they raise any fundamental issues of principle. So there is just one further issue to inform the members of. Members may recall were present at the September meeting last year. There was a solar farm site that was refused at Lettich to the east of Ludlow. Whilst we haven't had confirmation from PINS yet, we have received confirmation from the applicant that an appeal has been submitted and that they're expecting a hearing on that. So we will at some stage be requesting that members give some support to the defence of the council's position on that refusal decision. So that's all I really wanted to say on appeals, unless members have any particular queries on any of the individual documents in the pack.
Thank you. Right, item number 10, exclude the public and press. To consider the resolution under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 that we proceedings in relation to the following items shall not be conducted in public on the grounds that they involve likely disclosure of exempt information and defined by the provisions of Schedule 1.2 of A of the Act. Therefore, the proposer for exclusion of public and press. Thank you. Okay, all those in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you.
No.
There we go.
Still lives.